a geek. Talking baseball every week. 'Cause they're Gleeman and the Geek.
And welcome to Gleeman and the Geek, presented by Black Stag Brewing, now in a liquor store near you. I'm John Bonus of Twins Daily. With me, Aaron Gleeman of New York Times.
No, The Athletic, a New York Times subsidiary.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go with that.
Yeah. I'll tell you this. We had you've already sidetracked the show. Just by saying that.
Just saying
In
New York
fairness,
Times.
it's like
I like throwing your curveballs early.
wagging keys in front of a dog. It's not that difficult. I'm willing to be sidetracked easily.
Well, there ain't a lot of reasons not to get sidetracked.
Well, that's true.
Right
Yeah. We promise we'll get to the 10 signings and trades in a minute. But first,
that's right.
we had a Zoom with we being the Athletic staff.
Okay.
Had a Zoom with a woman from Blue Sky, which is the new social media,
Okay.
not
Gotcha.
that new, but alternative to Twitter, X, whatever. And she walked us through, like, I'm already on there.
How to skeet.
I don't like that, man. I'm just going to call it posting, maybe. But, like, the features that maybe we didn't know about and how to get verification, which is why I thought of this.
Right.
Because there aren't, like, there used to be on Twitter back in the day. There used to be check marks that said you were verified, and now people just pay $8 for a check mark, and it has the opposite effect. But there isn't that on Blue Sky. Instead, on Blue Sky, how you know it's not a good system, and somebody told you this, but they might be changing it. But on Blue Sky, how you know is that, like, instead of being like Aaron Gleeman .Blue Sky or whatever, which I am, follow me. Or not. You can be like Aaron Gleeman at the New York Times.
Right.
And that's
the
verification, because in order to get that handle, the parent company has to, like, verify you on that end.
Got it. So first you have to get the parent company verified, then you have to get the...
Right. It's like the organization
Yeah,
gets
Twitter kind of had the same thing
You
once
could
upon
do
a
this
time.
for Twins
Yeah,
Daily.
well, I think now that I know it exists, I
Now,
probably will.
You can ask yourself, what the F is that verifying? That
Exactly.
John says Seth is the real Seth.
That's right.
Not much,
That's
but
right.
whatever.
He is the real Seth.
I hate to see a second one. I have seen a second one. His brother looks exactly like
You
him.
are correct.
He's like you and your brother. I've rarely seen two sets of brothers look more alike than you and your brother. And Seth and what is Seth's brother's name? Shoot, I've met him multiple times. I apologize.
Now I'm
Super
gonna-
nice guy.
Nah, I know.
You know
I'm
what?
blanking too.
Way nicer than
Too early
way
on
nicer
Friday
than
mornings.
Seth.
Sure.
But anyway, my point was that we can't be the New York Times, because we can't be whatever name at New York Times on Blue Sky, because we're not technically New York Times employees. So when you said Aaron Gleeman of the New York Times, I thought, not on Blue Sky, brother.
So is it going to be Blue Sky, be Aaron Gleeman .athletic?
Maybe they're
The
working
Athletic?
on that. I don't know. I don't know that
I just like any time that I get to refer to you as athletic.
Yeah. Well, you saw how quick I walked in here.
Yeah, so you're very spry.
I'm about a week away from getting rolled into places. Pretty much. If I didn't have more, I don't know if it's pride or just a low bar for embarrassment, but I'm not going to be one of those guys who has a scooter, even though I probably could use one right now. But anyway,
I just view you and Stu Thornley jousting in
Yeah.
the Twins hallways,
Yeah.
Target Field hallways.
Stu rides around in that thing and he'll use it to hold the elevator. Like, he'll just plow into the elevator basically and hold it. And he really has the opposite mindset that I have, which is good for him.
He leads into it, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me, I like to just limp around. Anyway, it's winter meetings.
Eve.
Sort of, yeah.
Kind of.
People will be flying to, not me, but people will be, I'm skipping this year, but they'll try to go on without me, believe me. Going to Dallas starts Monday morning officially. People will roll in tomorrow or Sunday.
Sure.
We're recording this Friday morning, we should say. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I guess technically Thursday, but a lot of people leave. Wednesday is the annual winter meetings in Dallas, Texas, which is, we talked a little bit about it on the Patreon side. I think people maybe play it up as a bigger deal than it is.
Yeah, we went into it a lot. We went into it a lot on the Patriots side.
Yeah, and the only reason I won't go back into like the minutia of it, but I've gone to, I want to say 5 or 6 of them in kind of 2 different eras of my life. I went to the last 2 or 3 of this era.
Right.
I'm like Taylor Swift. I have eras. Does she limp around also? But
we're going to unpack that at some point.
I'm like Taylor Swift?
No, we're going to unpack the eras.
Oh, the eras of my life. Yeah.
The Aaron eras.
A lot of couch.
Yeah.
There was the couch era.
We're getting back to
Then
that
there was
topic.
the 6-month not on a couch era, and then there was the couch era. That's pretty much it. There used to be a coach in St. Paul, then there was a coach in Minnetonka, now there's a coach in Minneapolis.
Yeah,
that's really the
that's
only.
it.
That's it. It's not that great of a concert, really. Oh, special guests, though. Believe me, I'll bring everybody out. Gracie Abrams will come out. Anyway, easily sidetracked today. But the reason I say that the winter meetings can get kind of overblown from a fan perspective is that it's something everyone talks about because it's like a mile marker of the offseason in a way.
And it's a media
right. It's a media event is really what it is. It's become that because when the winter meetings first started decades and decades ago, it was truly just a way for all the front office people to get together in the same rooms because calling each other on the phone long distance was, I'm talking, decades ago, was the only way to do it. But now that you can have Zooms and you can have group chats and you can have God knows what, Slack, whatever, there isn't really a need. Like if Derek Falvey wants to talk to the GM of whoever, he can do it very easily.
It's similar to, it's probably most similar to like an industry convention.
Yes,
it's just that this industry is the baseball.
Yes,
industry.
well, and there is a trade show attached to it. There's a job fair attached to it.
Right.
But for the most part, it's become a media event in that hundreds of media members, including schlubs like me, go, and there's a giant media workroom where everybody sits and types away on their laptops, and they hold at least once a day. Each team holds like an availability up in their suite, which you go to, and then any key moves, there's like a availability for press conferences, and Boris always does his annual where he goes up in front and everybody runs like he's the president talking.
And I think it used to be sort of driven in popularity and in part media popularity because deals used to get done there. Like a lot of where the free agents would show up there, there'd be a big, the biggest free agents would do a big show and so on.
But similar to what I was saying about the front offices, there's no extra incentive to do it during the winter meetings.
But this is exactly what I'm going to get to, is that it'd also be like where we talk and that sort of thing. But now there's so many more ways to communicate that the primary reason, I think, for most media to go there is you get a lot of off-the-record talk with your own GM and or coach because everybody's just there killing time for 3 days, and you might as well have breakfast with Rocco.
Yeah. The primary reason I think is Marriott points for most of the writers.
Well, that could be
I would say I've never gotten a single Marriott point because I travel once a year and I'm too stupid to sign up. But talking to beat writers, including Dan,
they're obsessed with Marriott.
They
all stay at Marriott.
Yes, the entire beat writing infrastructure revolves around.
There must be something better about Marriott's.
I don't know.
Marriott's stuff.
I really don't know.
Other people.
But yeah, you're right about that. So that starts Monday, and yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a way for, in the Twins case, let's say. Well, we have talked to them because they changed the front office and they did the ownership thing, but for a lot of teams, you talk to them last day of the season or 2 days after the season, which is first week of October. And so it's been 2 months since you've had any sort of scheduled media availability for some of these teams. And if the Twins hadn't shaken up the front office, we wouldn't have had any with them.
Sure.
We just happened to have had some. And so, yeah, to be able to go up into the team suite and talk to them off the record, and you can get some info for the offseason ahead, but you can also kind of, and this is a big part of what I've learned doing this job for, 4 or 5 years now, you bank stuff for the long winter ahead.
Oh yeah, right.
Which is ideas.
You transcribe those things and
quotes,
right?
And you go, well, that's kind of interesting. Nobody really needs to know that today, but 2 months from now, or when the guy reports to spring training, I can tell this story of whatever. So that's what it's become. Built into the winter meetings, though, are 2 things that will be of interest to Twins fans. One is on Tuesday afternoon, I want to say, is the draft lottery.
Right.
The third annual? Yeah.
Yeah.
Third annual draft lottery. Now, I have attended each of the first two draft lotteries in person, and let me tell you, there's never been a more underwhelming event. And last year's was hosted by Brad Paisley, as I talked about on the Patreon, and even that couldn't.
Do we know who's hosting it this year? Are they trying to get that again?
I don't think it's gonna be Brad Paisley. Like maybe his brother,
he was booked.
Joe Paisley or something. Yeah, I don't think.
Different
but
country star.
They try to turn it into a made-for-TV event, and it just isn't. Because for one thing, I mean, even like the NBA draft lottery is not that interesting.
No.
Like it's a 5-minute thing.
Well,
but also,
even that isn't in front of like a live studio audience either, right? Like that's
This
just,
isn't either,
that's a
technically.
TV studio or something.
Yeah, I mean, this is just in a big ballroom.
Okay.
The studio audience is a bunch of crusty writers
Right.
sitting there
Exactly.
being shushed all the time. But beyond that, at least in the NBA draft lottery, the guy's number 1 pick, number 3 pick, number 5 pick, you go, oh, this guy's going to play this year. A
Well,
lot.
sure,
People
right.
are going to immediately know who he is.
Right.
MLB, it's like, oh, this guy will go to Cedar Rapids for a year and a half, and then
Right.
maybe you'll see him with the Saints 2 years from now. And then, so that's a big difference. But of note to the Twins, because they missed the playoffs, they are in the draft lottery. I believe I saw they have a 1-point-something% chance of getting the number 1 pick, and like a 10% chance, something like that, of moving into the top 6 because they draw for the top 6, and then after that it just fills out, which would be great. I mean, if you think back to the inaugural one 2 years ago,
Right.
I think they were supposed to pick in the low teens and end up picking fifth.
In what was a 5-person draft.
And they got Walker
and a
Jenkins.
strong 5-person draft.
Yes, I mean, they couldn't have worked out. Well, number 1 pick would have been Paul Skeens. That would have worked out.
That would have been
too.
pretty good too, right? Yeah.
But it worked out brilliantly for them. And then last year, the Brad Paisley hosted one. I was sitting there, and the Guardians had just narrowly missed the playoffs, similar to the Twins this year, and had like a 0.8% or a 1.2%,
Right.
something like that
Yeah.
chance, and they got the number 1 pick. So, it can happen with the Twins. I think certainly even moving into the top 6, while this is not considered a great draft class, I think it's considered just sort of a normal draft class. That would be big, not only from a talent standpoint,
Sure.
but also just a money to spread around standpoint, because the difference between like having the 13th pick and having the 5th pick is multiple $1 million that you can either spend on that guy or spread around to other picks in the draft.
Ultimately, your reward is you get to spend more on draft picks than other
Yes.
teams.
So perhaps the poll ads are rooting against. Is there a way for us to drop down in the draft? And then Wednesday is, Becky jokes a lot about the Rule 5 draft in our house because
She wants to know the first 4 rules.
no, she doesn't care at all.
Okay.
She just hears me talk about it. She hears us talk about it.
Right.
She sees me slacking my editor about it.
Do you think there's a fan base that talks more about the Rule 5 draft than the Twins fan base?
I mean, I can explain why.
Yeah, I can
It's
too.
very easy.
Yeah, Shane Mack and Johan Santana.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
When the best pitcher in the history of the franchise
Right.
and one of the better players on a World Series team in Shane Mack.
Mm-hmm.
And they've had some good ones prior to that, too.
Right.
I mean, they've also had, like, Ryan Presley was a great Rule 5 pick.
You're right.
Only about half for the Twins, but, they-
Was Blackburn in a Rule 5 pick?
No. Diamond.
Scott
Scott
Diamond.
is who
Scott
you're
Diamond.
thinking
That's
of.
right. Thank you.
But yeah, when that happens, people are, you get another 30 years of people caring about. Every time
Right.
you get a Cy Young winner from the Rule 5, you get 30 years of people
That's
caring
what
about
works,
it.
yeah.
Johan, before people correct us, which they love to do, and I don't blame you. There's plenty to correct. Think of this show as just a rough draft of a show.
Sure, that's right. That's right.
Now, is
That's right.
there going to be a final copy? No, but there's just a rough draft.
That's right.
It's a run through. Like we're on Broadway, but this is the run through. And then you say, well, when do you guys open? Nope. We just like to do run.
We just like to do dress rehearsals.
Yeah, just that's
That's
a
right.
dress
There you
rehearsal.
go.
A dress rehearsal for what? Well, good question. I don't know. Just our own entertainment.
That's right.
But Johan was picked by the Marlins from the Astros organization. He had been like a single A pitcher and wasn't even of note at all. But they had a prearranged trade for. Do you remember who they traded?
Jared Camp.
That's pretty good, John.
Yep.
Look at you, right-handed pitcher. Made the majors, I want to say, but didn't turn into anything. So you'll see that a lot. Like the team with the number 1 pick will like draft for someone in that spot, because when you get the number 1 pick or even the number 2 pick in the Rule 5 draft, which it just goes by record, it's the same as So they're bad teams, but a team that's decent, let's say, might love a guy who's available and know they have no shot at getting him with the 15th pick. So they might say, "Will you take this guy, trade him to us? We'll give you, X."
Right. You can't trade picks, so you actually take the player
You
and
draft for him. So they did an immediate trade. Johan took a few years, but turned into a great player. They've changed the rules for the Rule 5. So that's Wednesday afternoon.
That's right.
It's basically the last event of the winter meetings.
Right after that, people start going home.
In fact, let me tell you this. It's also just in a giant, where they have weddings.
That's
and
right.
stuff
Yeah,
like that.
it's in a room in a ballroom,
ballroom.
a hall in a hotel. Right.
Last year was in Ballroom D, I remember.
Right.
For
There
some
you go.
reason.
That's right.
People bring
There's a wedding on there three hours later. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
People bring their luggage to the Rule 5 draft.
Of course.
That's what usually happens.
Right.
They changed the rules to the Rule 5 draft, 5 years ago maybe, to add an extra year.
Yeah.
It used to be if you were a college pick, you had 3 years until you were eligible, 3 years of the minor leagues, and 4 years for a high school or teenage signing. And they added a year to those. I think I have that right. I might be off by a year.
Yeah,
but
this was a rough draft one because I remember it as being 4 and 5, and now it's 5 and 6. But I could be wrong.
No, it's not. It's not 6 because 6 you're a minor league free agent.
Okay. Oh, that's
Anyway, they added a year, and what that does is thins the pool considerably because you have an extra year to decide on all these guys. And so if you look at like the talent pool available, it's much, much worse because you're creating.
It is much less likely that something like the Santana or whatever.
You're just creating far fewer like actual difficult protection decisions.
Right.
And so if you look at like how many picks have actually been made in the Rule 5, it's shrunk. And like it used to be 20 picks. Now a lot of teams just pass in the first round. So from the Twins' perspective this year, I felt like when I previewed it, because I always preview it, my first year at The Athletic, I'd been at The Athletic for 2 months in 2019. And my editor was Zach Pierce, who's awesome. It was back when The Athletic was very compartmentalized. It was Minnesota Athletic. And he said, "Well, what ideas you got for the offseason?" And I said, "Well, we got to do a Rule 5 preview." And he was like, "What?"
Why?
He's like,
We've got to?
Who cares about that? And I had this long back and forth with him that he still jokes about. And I said to him, "Let's do it once. If the numbers are good, I say I told you so."
Right.
If the numbers
and you have to do it for the rest of your life.
Correct. But he quit as our editor.
You didn't think about that.
He got out of it. Well, I'll do it every year.
Okay.
But here's the thing. The numbers are always good.
Okay, good.
It always performs well as an article, no matter what the talent level is. This year, I think I listed 8 guys or something like that. I felt like they had 4 I probably would have protected. At least 3 I would have protected, and 4 I maybe would have protected. They ended up only protecting 2 players. They protected 2 pitchers. Marco Raya, who was the biggest no-brainer. He's one of their probably 3 to 5 best pitching prospects. And then also Travis Adams, who I think I had 4th on my list or 5th on my list. But he's like a kind of run-of-the-mill, durable back-end starter, and those guys are very easy to pluck away from teams in the Rule 5 because they can just slot them into a long relief role or whatever. The 2 that I was a little surprised that they didn't protect were a pair of right-handed hitters, kind of corner bat types, which is Kalai Rosario, who I think is probably the bigger name but the lesser prospect, and then Ricardo Olivar, who I personally am a big fan of. I think I'm probably maybe the high man on him, which is potentially a way of saying I overrate him. We'll see. But he's a catcher left fielder. Rosario is just a poor defensive right fielder. Both are right-handed hitters. Rosario is more of like a low batting average, high power guy. Olivar is more of like a control the strike zone, hit line drives type of guy. Neither of them were protected. Now, they're both certainly talented enough to get picked, but the issue with players like that are you really going to, because if you take a player in the Rule 5 draft that costs you $100,000 and you have to keep them in the major leagues on your major league roster for the entire season, and if the moment you try to take them off the major league roster, they're offered back to their original team for half the money, so you just lose $50,000 in the player. Right. And so part of the Rule 5 draft is just talent. Like, is this guy good enough to get taken? But a big part of it, at least half of the decision-making, involves, do we think one of the other 29 teams will actually take this guy and keep him in the majors all season. And
Right.
with a backup shortstop or a backup catcher or a middle reliever or like Travis Adams,
fourth outfielder, like
fourth
Akil
outfield-
Baddoo.
or a back end starter
Right.
who can be a long reliever. Those guys can just fill bit roles on your team and not hurt you either way. And then you try to develop them as much as you can. But with a right-handed hitting right fielder,
Right.
it's like, do you really want that guy to get 150 at bats in a platoon role? And he's probably not ready. And neither of them have played above Double-A. They're both pretty young. So the Twins are taking, in my mind at least, a fairly big risk with those two of leaving them unprotected. There's a pitcher named Christian McLeod who is a kind of a left-handed Adams type who could get taken, but he's got more of an injury history. Here's one name you brought up under a different context the other day. Giovanni Moran,
All right. Yeah.
who is signed to a 2-year minor league
Right.
deal after being dropped from the 40-man roster and has missed all of last season following Tommy John surgery. Now, before Tommy John surgery, I'm not going to say he was a reliable reliever, but he showed flashes of being a
Right.
good
Yeah.
major league reliever.
That's right.
Lefty with a pretty good fastball and a great changeup.
Some control issues.
That's a very nice way of saying
That's
that.
right.
Didn't know where the hell the ball was going half the time. So who knows what he's going to look like after an elbow surgery, obviously, and a year and a half on the sidelines. He might come back and,
Yeah,
he might
that's-
not be able to
that's
hit the broadside of a barn. But not on the 40-man roster. He would be an addition. I will say this. So it's been like 3 weeks since they made their 2 protections, and the rosters get locked at that point, so you can't add anybody late. I've heard from people from other organizations who are kind of sniffing around some twins, some unprotected twins, to the point that some names I'd expect, some names I wouldn't expect. There's a guy named Will Holland who's like a center fielder, shortstop who was at AAA last year, could be a utility type of guy. There's a few other names, but to the point that now I'm starting to think they might lose somebody.
I mean, that is the other reason to watch the Rule 5 draft is because even if your organization doesn't acquire somebody like a Yohan Santana, people are interested in who you might lose somebody. Right.
But they haven't really. I'm trying to think. The last guy they lost, Akil Baddoo.
Akil Baddoo was
Which
the
that
big
looked
one.
really bad for a year and now looks inconsequential, basically,
Right.
because he's
That's
just
right.
sort of a fifth outfielder
That's
type
right.
or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't be.
He is what he was when they drafted him, essentially.
Yeah.
He's a fifth outfielder.
Yeah, that's true.
How they kept him on the roster.
I mean, that's why I remember when he then, I think he might have finished like third in the Rookie of the Year voting for the Tigers 3 years ago. And I remember when he was playing well for the Tigers that first year, asking somebody with the Twins, like, do you guys regret leaving him unprotected? And the answer was, well, yeah, obviously he's doing well for them, but the logic behind it seemed fairly sound, which is he had an injury and hadn't really played, I don't think, above high A. And I think that was in 2021, which means he was coming off a 2020 season where he didn't even play minor league baseball.
Right, that's right.
So it had been like over a year since he had had any game action. So unless they had a drone flying over a CHS,
That's exactly
nobody
right.
saw him doing anything. It was a leap of faith by the Tigers. And, maybe
I mean, there were a lot of leaps of faith between the 2020 and the Rule 5 draft. Like, there were a lot of people like, oh, I hear from such and such,
Correct.
so-and-so is doing something.
Which is
They're trying to sneak him through.
the type of sniffing around I'm getting.
Right.
Which is, what do you know about this guy? What was his health at the end of the year? All this type of stuff. So we'll see. That's Wednesday. And I don't know. I don't expect, certainly at the Twins level, it sounds like Juan Soto might be on the verge of signing.
Sure.
But at the Twins level, they're waiting for the trickle-down economics of this thing.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I don't expect them to make
You
it.
might hope that the winter meetings are a place where they could, if they're interested in doing some trades or shaking up the roster a little bit, making some deals, that would be a place where that sort of thing is more easily discussed than via Zoom call / text via whatever. But I will tell you the source was the update given internally was, quote, "We have no irons in the fire."
Right. Yeah, that's about right.
And so, I don't know that
They can neither afford a fire nor
or iron.
an iron. I almost said an onion. They can't even afford an onion. No onions in the fire either. Before we move on to some coaching news by the Twins,
You know what is fire? Black Stack Brewing. Okay. Black Stack Brewing is absolute fire. And I'm going there tonight.
Shocking.
Yeah, shockingly. I'm going to the tap room.
Say hi to Becky. I'm sure she'll be there with you.
No,
That bonus is permanent third wheel.
I have not invited Becky. We'll have to maybe
She
reach out
just
to her.
spawns there. Like, she just shows up.
We're gonna meet. I think we're gonna meet up with the owner Cooper. Maybe get a little tour of such
look
stuff.
at you,
Yeah.
John.
I like Black Stack Brewing. I've been there a couple of times over the last few months. I'm looking forward to going there with some new friends, and then and actually with our goddaughter. But the truth is, you don't have to go to the tap room anymore. You can just go to your liquor store, because that's the beauty of Black Stack Brewing, is that all those people who, would make the trek to the tap room to get their, well-recognized beer now can just go to their liquor store. So you're going to be going to like various holiday events. You're going to be responsible for bringing a 6-pack or something like that, or maybe you're having a holiday event, or maybe you're having people over. Go down to the liquor store and ask for Black Stack.
Or
Brewing.
maybe you've just spent a lot of time with your family over the holidays and you need to drink some beer.
They've got some very high ABV IPAs that will help you. Some
So Black Stack
IPAs
has distribution now in a number of liquor stores, and the list is growing. You can go to Black Stack's website, and they have like where to find us page.
That's right.
And also, if your neighborhood liquor store doesn't carry them, tell them, and they can start carrying.
They also have some lower ABV beers as well, like they're like their
check out
Slope
Black
French
Stack.
Pilsner.
You can go see them. They're like 94 and 280 ish.
Right.
But also just go look for them in your local store.
That's right.
Harry's Razors. They have a longtime sponsor of ours, but they have a holiday craft set, which is a great gift. Or you can just buy it for yourself and get a good shave in 2025.
That's exactly right.
You can get it. Includes a razor with a craft handle, your choice of foaming shave gel or shaving cream, 2 extra blades, and then also a travel blade cover. Now, like I said, they've been a longtime sponsor.
Yeah, I
When
mean,
they have these new.
They've been a longtime sponsor because I've been a longtime user. I love my. I will just challenge you this: if you haven't used Harry's razors yet, and you're using your old razor, try, and you want to get a really good close shave. Try just shaving yourself the way you normally do. Go with the grain. That's usually up to down, and then lather up again and try going down up, which is against the grain. You're going to end up with one of two things. It's going to go. If you don't have Harry's razors, you're going to nick up your face.
Yeah, I was about to say, you could end
because
up
that razor has had seen better days.
Kleenex on your
you got
face.
the Kleenex on your face afterwards. If you Harry's razors, odds are it's a brand new Harry's razor. It's already 5 blades. It's already sharp as hell anyway to begin with. And you're going to end up with you're going to want to keep touching your face throughout the day. You're going to be like, I can't believe that I am this smooth on my face.
Boy, sometimes I walk in and Johnny's just rubbing his own face.
I do.
I'm thankful that's all he's. Never mind. What I was going to say is, over the years, when they've had a new offer, they've sometimes sent us a sample, and
Yes.
I'm always very impressed by the
quality's so good.
packaging and the quality. And in this case, if you buy this or you get this, as a gift for someone, there's no gift wrapping required. It comes in a rich, sleek green gift box that'll stand out, and you can personalize it with engraving options. It's a risk-free purchase. Harry's offers a 100% money-back guarantee. Order by December 12th to receive your
key.
holiday craft set by Christmas. I think it'll start to be available either now or certainly by Monday.
That's right. Yep.
And you just need to go to get the holiday craft set in the green box, the free handle engraving, harrys.com/Gleeman. That's HARRYS. Harrys.com/Gleeman for the Harry's holiday craft set. All right. I didn't know you have a son?
I have a goddaughter.
How? What?
You know the family, actually.
What kind of sickos? Do I?
Yeah, especially because they're Lutheran and we're Catholic. Well, my wife's Catholic.
That's the
I was
least
raised
of my
Lutheran.
problems with you as a god. Religion wouldn't even come into it. I hope this kid likes beer.
Oh, I'm working on that.
Yeah,
for sure.
I figured.
That's right.
I saw you with a friend of ours' dog the other day, working on that.
Yeah. By the way, I'm with the people she already has in her life.
Already into beer.
they're gonna. Yeah, they're not. Oh, we're going to Black Stack Brewing tonight. Of course, they're into beer.
True. Let's talk a little bit about coaching staff stuff. So the Twins announced a month ago, maybe, that Matt Borgschulte was going to replace David
Did
Popkins.
they actually announce it, or did we just find it out?
That's
I don't
a
remember.
good question.
I can't remember. I was trying to remember if they actually announced it, because when they were making the announcements yesterday, I was like, "Are we going to finally get the Borgschulte announcement?" But I might have just missed it.
Well, there was no Zoom with him, so that makes me think maybe they didn't announce it. Anyway, Matt Borgschulte is the hitting coach, which we knew a month ago,
right?
Either because they announced it or because everyone reported it and knew. Yeah, that's a good question. It's always a good question with them. They hold things weirdly, but they revealed the rest of the Rocco Baldelli's, I think, 11-person staff, I want to say, for 2025, which includes 3 new people, and in addition to Borg Schulte, so a total of 4 new people, and then some changing roles for a couple of the holdovers. So we're going to go over those in a second. The ones that haven't changed, let's go over those first, just so people know. Rocco Dan Baldelli is still the manager. We knew that on the last day of the season. When Fall.
We knew his middle name was Dan on the last day of the season?
I knew that for a while now.
Okay, all right.
To be honest with
all
you.
right.
Now I'm starting to doubt that. Anyway.
Again, first draft.
Yeah. If only we had a way to look that up. Jace Tingler, don't know his middle name. But it's a good name.
It is.
Yeah. Becky likes Jace Tingler because she thinks it's just a great name.
That's a good name.
Yeah. My goal is to introduce her to him at some point and say, here's your favorite name in the majors, Jace Tingler.
I would think that would be.
You don't need a middle name.
I like having the last name Bonus. Like I like that.
Yeah.
Even though most people can't pronounce it correctly the first time they see it. But having a last name Tingler.
Yeah.
I feel like
you could do some things with that.
I feel like you could play with that a little bit.
Gleeman and the Tingler.
Yikes.
Yeah. I don't like that.
No, you don't.
Tingler. Yeah. Anyway.
I don't need to know about last name.
No, we've been mocking. I never liked my last name. I think I've told this story before. When I was, this is going to insult one side of my family, but whatever. When I was like 16, 17, and I was thinking about going into writing,
yeah.
My plan was to change my pen name to
what was it going to be?
The other side of my family's name.
Oh, okay.
And then I got a gig with Roto World in college and hadn't done it.
Right.
And I don't want to say like I got known or anything, but
you had a blog by that point,
right?
Too.
I had a blog and I had clips and stuff like that, so now it was too late to do it. So now I'm just Gleeman.
Although even then it was Aaron's baseball blog. I don't know that you went into your last name. Did you have your last name?
I mean, it said
there?
it, but it wasn't.
Okay. All right.
I wasn't shouting it from the rooftops.
Okay.
Like I do now, where the first word is Gleeman and the Geek. We should
promo code Gleeman.
How about on year 20?
See, now that is what we should be doing.
That's not my doing, by the way. I don't want my name as the promo code. That's just what they send us.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they just look what the name of the show is. They take the first.
Right. How would you like it if our promo code was Tingler?
We could do that.
There you go.
We've had a few where it's been Geek.
We have had a couple with Geek.
That's fine with me. Yeah, let's do that. Jace Tingler remains the bench coach. The trio of pitching coaches, which is Pete Mackey as the primary pitching coach, Luis Ramirez, as the assistant pitching coach, and then Colby Suggs as the bullpen coach, which is basically just an assistant pitching coach who sits out in the bullpen during the game. That remains unchanged. So the trio of pitching is the same. Nate Dahman, who's probably not real well known to people, is the quality control coach, which basically means he kind of runs the day-to-day aspect of it, the timing of everything, the scheduling of everything, particularly during spring training. It all revolves around Nate Dahman. The fact that they're doing this workout at 9:30 and this workout at 10:15 is the choice made by Nate Dahman.
Yeah, everybody's complaining to Nate Dahman about everything. That's right.
He's in the same role. And then the controversial one, I suppose, based on my Twitter replies and my Blue Sky replies also, is Tommy Watkins remaining in the third base coach / outfield coach role. I'm not surprised by that, but I get that people assumed, I guess, even that if he remained on the staff, he might no longer be the third base coach because that water got pretty hot at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. But as we've talked about a lot over the years on this show, and I guess that in and of itself is proof of what I'm about to say. Think in your heads, whether you're a Twins fan, whether you're a fan of another team, of a popular
third base coach.
Respected, touted third base coach. There isn't any.
It's a lot of credit.
I mean, maybe there's one. I don't know.
Right.
And now think, how many third base coaches have been run out of that job because everyone was furious? And now think, if everyone who's in that job, as great Raylan Givens in Justified said, if you run into an a-hole in the morning, and then you run into an a-hole in the afternoon, and then you run into an a-hole at night, maybe you're the a-hole. If every third base coach
I see that.
is, in the opinion of fans, doing a horrendous job, perhaps it's the job itself
Yeah,
that
maybe.
lends itself to criticism, I would say. But with that said, he'll remain in that role. Here are the changes that we can go through. I might have botched that Raylan Givens quote, but you get the idea. Again, rough draft of a show. We'll get in post. We'll fix
Have
it.
you watched the entire series of Justified?
I have seen it 3 times. I
the
believe.
entire series?
Yes.
I need to watch that.
It's a great show.
Yeah.
Took me like 4
I've seen
years
clips of it, and I think I'd love it.
to talk Becky into watching it. And here's what often happens. Here's a little glimpse behind the scene of Casa de Gleeman. I will say this is one of my all-time favorite shows. No,
That's not the way to
right.
lead.
Some of those she's not into. I
Right.
get that, but this one I said this is a legitimately good show.
Right.
The lead is both charming and incredibly good-looking by my estimation, so she can watch him on screen. And she said, "No, I don't want to watch it." I watched it a second time, like with her in the other room. And then here's what always does it.
She got one look at.
No, you would think that. I was like, this guy with the cowboy hat, he's doing nothing for you anyway. She need like Ricky Rubio or somebody to come
Sure,
on.
yeah.
Here's what convinces her to watch something. There are 3 local influencers that you know.
Okay.
One is named Randball Stew.
Okay.
One is named Brandon Broxy.
Really?
And one is named...
Broxy's an influence.
Yeah, to her.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And one is named Zach Floyd. Now, these are lovely people.
Yeah.
These are 3 of the favorite people I've met
Love them.
in my life.
Yes.
Great to have a beer with. Great to go to a Jason Isbell show and sway silently next to, which I've done several times with them. Influencers, style influencers. I don't know that I'd call them that, but here's what happened.
Trust them on it. I think I trust that threesome on entertainment.
Don't call them a threesome, please, because that. Yeah, but here's what
trio.
happens. For years, I'm saying, watch Justified with me. Watch Justified with me. No, I'm not into it. It's a cowboy show, whatever. It's not a cowboy. They had some back and forth one day on Twitter where it was like somebody posted a GIF of Raylan Givens, and Stu's like, "Oh man, I'm gonna watch that again. Great show, my favorite show." Next morning, she's like, "We should watch Justified."
Perfect.
It's like, what do you mean?
Perfect.
Anyway,
Have you thought about, similar to, advertisers approaching us to talk about their fantastic products?
I approach
You approach.
Broxy, Stu, Floyd, and tell them, talk about this.
That's right.
Well, I'll expand this now. One of my favorite documentaries I've ever seen is called Hero Dreams of Sushi. I believe it won an Academy Award. It was nominated. It's like 10 years ago, something like that. It's about like a small sushi restaurant that's been in some small place in Japan, I think, in like a subway station. It's like got 4 seats.
Okay.
It's like the greatest sushi.
Sure.
And it's about the guy Hiro, not hero like our spelling, but
Right.
Jiri, I think, who's like the master sushi man. I just thought it was a fascinating look at someone's craft.
Okay.
For 10 years now, I've been trying to get her to watch it. And we watch every documentary.
Sure.
She will not watch it, to the point that we do a Top Chef competition every year. We watch that show.
Okay.
We each draft a team.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to actually tell me you cooked.
Oh, God, no. No, in fact, I usually order DoorDash while we're watching Top Chef. And the winner of that competition, it's like a fantasy draft scoring, gets to force the other person to watch any piece of media up to and including 3 hours.
Okay.
For 4 consecutive seasons of Top Chef, I have been playing to win to force her to watch Hero Dreams of Sushi, I think 98% Rotten Tomatoes documentary, and she beats me every single year. So to your point,
That's funny.
close circuit to Stu,
Right.
or Brandon, or Zach.
Yeah, she listens.
Yeah, that's the problem.
She listens now.
Yeah, don't listen.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the coaching staff. Hank Conger.
Another great last name.
Yeah, good. Hank Conger's a great
they've got
name.
a lot. There's Suggs. Good last
let's
name.
not overlook the name Rocco Baldelli.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a pretty great effing name.
Yes, good.
Hank Conger had been the first base coach / catching coach. He will remain the catching coach. He's a former major league catcher, obviously. He's moving from first base coach to assistant bench coach, which is technically a promotion, I think. I think a lot of it is getting him off his feet. I know he's had some health problems, similar to one you have. with your legs and your feet.
Oh, yeah, right.
I think he eats too many steaks and drinks too much beer, perhaps. I don't want to speak for anyone. I don't know. Hank's a fun guy. And so he's now the assistant bench coach. And Ramon Borrego, I hope I'm saying that correctly, it will now take over as the first base coach.
Right.
And he will be the / infield coach, which had been Tony Diaz's gig. And he was among the 4 coaches let go a month or so ago. Borrego has spent 20 years in the organization. Most of that as a manager.
30. I think he started. I think he was a player in 1994, drafted or 1995 or something.
He's most recently been, I think.
No, I'm sorry. No, that's right.
It's 20 something.
21 years. You're right.
Yeah.
He began by coaching at Twins Vanderbilt.
That's almost 30.
Yep.
Compared to 0. He past 3 or 4 years was the AA Wichita manager, and before that was the Fort Myers manager, and before that was the rookie ball manager. He's been a huge part of their farm system and their organization and their player development for a long time now. I know from talking to rookies, let's say, or prospects when they come up, and you ask them, who played a big role in your development. He is a common name that is cited both from a on-field but also off-field standpoint, mentorship standpoint. And if you think back to what happened at the end of last season when a lot of the young hitters kind of collapsed and there was some, I don't want to say infighting, but some quotes going around that people didn't like. Well, he has coached and managed all these dudes.
Right.
Yep. He's been Royce Lewis's manager in 3 different seasons. He's managed, name a young Twins hitter and they've come up and played under him. And also I just like the idea of 20 years of, by all accounts, a well-respected run.
Long before the Falvey era. And in fact, he was, a player of the Twins organization, 1996.
Right.
So he topped out at AAA Edmonton. Like, that's how long ago.
Like 4 AAAs ago.
Yeah, 2002. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Wow. That's...
So, yes, he's been around for a long time. And, yeah, I do like that he's been somebody that most of especially the younger players, have had experience with quite a bit. And, he's been at AA for, 7 years, you say?
No, 3 or 4 years, I think.
No. Before Wichita, though. He was at AA even before that.
Oh, Chattanooga. That was only 1 year. They were only at Chattanooga for the 1 year.
Okay.
So he's the new first base coach and infield coach. And beyond that, then, we mentioned Matt Borgschulte, who had been if you go back 4 years, he was the Twins AAA hitting coach. And that offseason, he had done that for a couple years and was, I would say, pretty well respected there, too. They opted not to promote him to the Major League hitting coach, which was open, and instead brought in David Popkins from the Dodgers organization. He had been the Dodgers high A hitting coach. And 3 years later, they fired Popkins and 2 assistants, and then went back to Borgschulte, who had spent the last 3 years as the co-hitting coach for the Baltimore Orioles in the majors. And during that time, the Orioles, I think, ranked like first or second run scored, had a ton of good young hitters. And they basically, essentially said, how about a do-over on that?
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and I'm sure there was some money involved, and I'm sure there was a new title because he's the primary hitting coach now.
They also needed a name to offset the really good names.
You don't think Borgschulte's a good? That's really.
That's
I'm going to tell him
probably
he said that. So he's the primary hitting coach. So he technically replaces David Popkins. He now has 2 new assistants that they named yesterday. I'm going to pray I pronounce this correctly. Trevor Amicone, who had been for the last couple of years the Yankees AAA hitting coach.
Right.
And then Raiden Sierra, which is a great
name. Like that, absolutely.
Who had been...
He offsets the Borgschulte for sure.
Okay. I stick to the positives. Let's talk about the great names. We don't need the... Raiden Sierra, who coached in the minors for the Twins in the low minors for a few years, but last year was their minor league assistant hitting coordinator, which basically means he's going place to place, kind of filling in the blanks and helping run their development on the hitting side. Both pretty young. Borgschulte himself is in his 30s. These are all 3 pretty young guys. It's interesting to hire a guy from AAA Yankees much like hiring someone from the Dodgers or the Rays or something like that, or Cleveland on the pitching side, let's say, there's kind of a built-in assumption that the Yankees themselves made a good hire, probably.
Yeah, probably.
When they brought him in.
It doesn't hurt you.
Right.
Right.
So it's almost like you pass the first background check there just because it's like, well, the Yankees hired him.
Right.
Well, the Dodgers hired him. Well, that didn't work out necessarily with Popkins. But Popkins, we should note, we talked about this at the time, got a job before Borg-Schulte.
Right.
He was hired as the new Blue Jays hitting coach, which I don't know that I necessarily would think that's a worse job than the Twins hitting coach.
No, I would think.
For a year at least, he's got Vlad Guerrero to work with.
Interesting.
Anyway, so that's the
And
new...
potentially Soto.
Well, we'll see.
Should we talk about that after our sponsor?
Sure. So, but that's the new coaching staff. That's a decent amount of turnover, obviously. It's not the amount or level of turnover that the fans with the pitchforks wanted. Obviously, that would have started with the front office or the manager or something. But I will say this: like, the team is for sale. The 2-decade president is phasing out, stepping down, however you want to do it. There's been a movement in the front office that they've basically promoted the number 2 to kind of a 1B situation right now with Jeremy Zoll. And they blew up.
The GM left.
Well, yeah, the old number 2, Thad Levine, left.
Right.
And they completely overhauled the entire hitting department of the coaching staff. That's
a fair amount of change.
That's a decent amount. Even if it didn't quite check every box that everyone was looking for. So that's the coaching staff. I wish I knew more about some of these guys to tell you. Hopefully, if you actually meet them or they do a Zoom or something like that, I can get some more background on them. But that's, I don't know. Here's the thing. I'm not convinced teams themselves can predict who will make a good manager or a good coach. And so certainly podcasters who have never met these guys cannot predict it.
I mean, it's like hiring anybody in any position.
True, but I would say if you look back at and I think this is true, like NFL coaching, all sorts of stuff. If you look back at the hirings, especially on a manager front, every offseason there's 7 new managers, whatever it is.
Right.
If you look back and determine in your mind who the most kind of praised hiring was, I bet that person had a less than 50% success rate.
It could be.
And
it could be.
A lot of the times, the guys who just weren't thought of as anything, and on a coaching front or assistant, I don't think anybody has any ability to predict that. So we'll see.
Interesting mix of inside the organization, outside the organization, people about youth and age. It's I don't know if they were. I mean, I think coming out of last season, there was certainly and I think we've seen this even when Polanco left. Santana came in part not just to replace his bat, but also because they felt like they needed some chemistry, to replace Jorge Polanco's impact. I wouldn't be shocked if part of the coaching hires on this, Pete, beyond the experience and sort of where they're from and just their excellence in doing their job, is also based on, we also need just a little different mix of personalities amongst the coaching staff or in the locker room.
Well, I mean, I would say half of coaching is being a therapist basically on a daily basis. Or a wrangler, or a whatever is needed, a disciplinarian, whatever is needed, a friend, whatever.
And bringing in a different mix like that maybe allows you to reach different people at different times.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is true on a team level too, but I also, we talk a lot about how people tend to, I think fans and media members tend to overstate the stickiness of performance on a team level from year to year.
Sure.
And we're seeing that now with the Twins, which the fan base is understandably just in the worst mood after what happened.
Yeah. How it is how it is.
And every comment is well, if they don't do anything big this offseason, then they're doomed next season.
Right.
And it's I don't know, most of the projections that are, clean slate in this thing have them in a fairly decent light. And I think that's true from a chemistry or clubhouse or coaching or interpersonal aspect too, which is all that stuff is important. And there are some times where it's like, we got to make a change. Like this isn't working. Nobody likes working with this person. I don't think that was the case in this. I mean, Popkins and his assistants were pretty popular. Tony Diaz is one of the nicest guys I've ever met, all that. But I think there's value sometimes in like just hitting reset, even if almost like a change for change sake. Like just, all right, it's new season, like new faces, new voice, literally and figuratively, new approach to certain things.
Yeah.
Even
we got to shake something up. Let's shake this up.
Right. And I think it's easier to do that with a coaching staff, obviously, than an entire roster full of people.
Perhaps you are thinking of shaking up how you your financial stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting across the table from somebody who's recently discovered the value of investing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
right. As opposed
beyond
to just
lottery
money.
Lottery
and,
ticket.
it may be that one of those things where you hear, hey, the 2024 has been a really good year for the market in a lot of ways, and you're kind of cringing, going, maybe I should be
You're like
looking
me, you go,
into
what's the market?
Yeah.
You got a lot to learn.
Maybe I should be looking into investing, but I get why you don't. It's scary.
Yes.
Like you don't want to do something stupid. You know how you handle that? You do it a little bit at a time. And that's where the Acorns app comes in.
Today's episode is sponsored by Acorns. Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing for you, your kids, your retirement, even during the holidays. You don't have to be an expert. Like John said, it can recommend a diversified portfolio. You don't need that much time. You can create an account. You can start doing stuff in a couple of minutes.
That's right.
And you really don't have to be rich.
This is the best part.
It lets you start with the spare money you've got right now. Could be $5 a day, even just some spare change. Acorns can round every purchase you make up to the dollar and then automatically invest that extra
spare change for you.
Yes.
Yeah. And you can go ahead.
You can get bonus investments just for buying the stuff you need from the brands you love.
So here's what you do. It's an app, so you head to acorns.com/Gleeman, or you download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. Here's how the disclaimers. Paid non-client endorsement. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Investing involves risk. Acorn Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/Gleeman.
Our next sponsor is Raycon. And I will tell you that I just got a new pair of Raycon headphones, and I love them.
I mean, this is how you become a MVP at the Christmas giving, holiday giving.
So Raycon
thing right here
are everyday earbuds, and what would make them a great gift is that good quality,
right?
Good battery life,
right?
Easy to pair for people who are tech idiots like me.
Exactly right. Yep.
And
people who might have been afraid to get earbuds because they're not sure how they work or something like that.
John and Chrissy go running with them, and I know the actual physical fit in your ear is better than a lot of other brands.
Correct.
And what makes them a good holiday gift for people like me is that they're at a lower price point.
Yes.
And a as good or higher quality level with a lower price.
It's just a well-engineered stuff at a good price.
Yes. And you can save big for the holidays and get up to 25% off site-wide at buyraycon.com/Gleeman. You'll get up to 25% off everything on Raycon's website when you go to Buy Raycon. That's BUYRAYCON. Buyraycon.com/Gleeman. That's buyraycon.com/Gleeman. Okay. Juan Soto is supposedly close to signing. I am going to go out on a limb and say it won't be with the Twins. Here's the mind of Dan Hayes, which we often talk about on this show, because it needs to be documented for science. Should I read this?
I was afraid you were going to say for legal reasons.
Yeah, well, maybe that too. He said.
He had a tweet out there?
He said 2 days ago, hey, what do you think of this? Actually, I'm going to do...
Oh, this is a text. Okay, it's not a tweet. All right.
Text. This is a trial balloon for a possible tweet, which is often what happens with Dan Hayes. Read this in your mind in the Beavis and Butthead book. What do you think of this one? Quote,
good.
Unsourced.
That's pretty good imitation.
The Twins have been informed they're no longer in the running to sign Juan Soto. And I said...
That's great.
I said, it's a effing boring offseason, huh, Dan? And I don't think he tweeted it.
I love that. He should have done that. That'd have been great.
Sure, why not? It's not your New York Times subsidiary that he's
I'm
ruining.
Truth's Daily account will steal that.
Sure, yeah. Make sure to market parody like you do with Ramball Stew stuff. A lot of years, even for the Twins, who obviously don't typically spend that much in free agency, although they've signed a top 5 guy in 3 of the last 7 off seasons or something like that, with 2 Correas and a Donaldson. But you can at least do kind of the connecting dots at this point in a lot of off seasons, even for the Twins, and say, well, okay, they're not going to sign so-and-so, but once this guy signs and this guy signs, and then there'll be some musical chairs going on and people will pivot. And I think
Nelson Cruz could be available.
Right, or whatever.
That's where we...
Donaldson himself was that.
Well, that's true.
And for that matter, Correa was
you
that.
are correct.
But this time, I don't think there's really a pivot to be made because they don't have any money to pivot.
Right, that's right.
And maybe there's a pivot at some point with some dominoes falling with some trades, obviously. And I think what we can go over here is there's been a decent amount of early activity. And by early, I just mean pre-winter meetings activity.
Right.
And especially on the starting pitching front.
Right.
You saw Blake Snell.
What we're seeing is the starting pitching market looks a little stronger than...
Well, we're seeing a couple things. One is they're signing for more than most projections.
Right.
Now, that can just mean the projections weren't good, but whatever.
Yeah. But, I mean, those projections are based on past salaries. So we're seeing a significant raise over a bigger raise than we expected to see over previous years.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's just looking at similar guys last year, the year before, and that's it. But we're also seeing, and I think maybe people will read too much into this if they don't recognize this second factoid, which is the vast majority, almost all of these 5 or 6 free agent starters, prominent free agent starters who have signed, are Scott Boras clients.
Yeah.
And so if you look at the market without knowing who they're represented by, especially when it's someone like Scott Boras, who's such a big part of everything, you go, oh my God, pitchers are coming off the board, teams are moving quickly. Well, think of what happened to Scott Boras and his many high-profile clients last offseason, which is he took the opposite approach, which he often does. He often will let the market sort of, gas itself out and then step in late when everyone doubts, so there's no money to be had.
I mean, he had certainly some big names that happened to, correct?
Yes, but it backfired badly last offseason,
right.
To the point that there were articles written and certainly people talking as he lost his fastball after 30 years of doing this or whatever. And so it's no surprise that his reaction to that was, let's get these guys off the board early. The surprise, though, is it hasn't seemed to hurt the deals they're doing.
That's what I was going to say. There's one thing if you say, oh, well, Boras is panicking, he's taking low-ball offers. No, he's not taking low-ball offers.
Right.
These are.
It remains to be seen.
Well,
it's possible that the market is just going to be very inflated overall.
Crazy.
But we haven't. Right. All I'm saying is we haven't seen what the market necessarily is. We've seen Scott Boras clients so far, what their actions are.
Fair.
But let's go through some of those. So Blake Snell signed like a $180 million deal with the Dodgers, who is a Boras client who had to settle for a 1-year deal last offseason.
Right, that's right. Yeah, he was one of the guys who got burned, but turned out okay for him.
That's the thing.
That's right.
If you add in last offseason,
that's part of his talking point, though, on these, is waiting out the market. Is that even if you do end up taking a short-term deal, then kick ass that year and you get another long-term deal. Right.
Sometimes you don't kick ass that year.
Well,
and
that is
you're
correct.
in a weird spot.
Sure.
But I mean, if you take the $35 million he made last year from the Giants on the 1 year with the opt-out, and you add it to the $180 million he just got from the Dodgers. He basically just got a 7-year, $210 million deal, which he would have been thrilled to get.
And he had the qualifying offer last year too, hanging over him, didn't he?
Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, you get around that little obstacle as well.
Here's the funny, I guess he won the Cy Young Award 2 years ago.
No, that's true,
and couldn't get this type of offer.
That's true.
It's strange, but the other starters who have signed, second biggest one was actually yesterday. I will set this as the leader in the clubhouse for strangest deal of the offseason, and I would not expect it to be topped. Or
Twins daily slack on this one.
Yeah, which is
Luis
Severino, who's a perfectly solid number 3 starter type of guy. Former Yankee, pitched last year for the Mets, coming back from injury, had a good solid season, but not a lot of strikeouts. Signed a 3-year, $67 million deal, and he had the qualifying offer, which means costs a draft pick.
Right.
And now, if you haven't heard the news, think in your head of, 25 teams you think might have signed him to that deal. It wasn't one of those 25 teams.
Nope.
I don't know who the 25 you named, but it wasn't one of those. It was not even Oakland, the Sacramento Athletics,
Yes.
who he now represents half of their payroll for 2025. Literally. They have a $46 million projected payroll, and he's making $23 million.
Right.
I'm all for teams spending money.
Right.
And they're still at a $50 million payroll. They got another $50 million to spend before I would even say they're trying in old Gleeman the Geek terms. But why 20-something million on a 30-something-year-old number 3 starter?
Right.
And why 3 years? And why give up a draft? They should not be making any signings that give up a draft pick ever.
Right.
No team needs draft picks more than the Oakland or the A's. It's going to take me a while to get over that.
I mean, and he's already gotten the qualifying offer. I was just like, well, they think maybe he'll thrive and they'll trade him away at the deadline.
But who wants
a 3-year deal?
That's
too.
the other thing is, it seems so. Like most of the projections on him, well, actually, last month when he got the qualifying offer, there were some people that speculated he would just take the qualifying offer, which is 1 year, $21 million. He turned that down. Then most of the projections were like, $20 million a year for 2 years. 240, 245, something like that. Maybe even a little higher. 367 is above and beyond anybody's expectation. It seems clear to me that this was twofold. One, they just had to pay a premium to get him. And probably to get anyone. And if I were to guess, I would say he was not their number one target or even their number one targeted mid-rotation starter.
Right.
I'm going to guess they were in the market for some similar guys, maybe slightly higher rated or ranked free agents.
Okay.
And those guys said, the A's? What? Because they have two things working against them.
In Sacramento?
The first is they're just not contenders.
Right.
I mean, they haven't won for 5 years.
Right.
Now, if they add some talent and they keep adding some talent, you could maybe become a contender. And then the other thing is the one you just mentioned, which is not that Oakland was any great place to play, but they're going to be playing in a literal AAA ballpark in Sacramento for probably at least the next 2 or 3 years before this hypothetical, move to Las Vegas, which may or may not happen at this point. So to get a veteran guy who, by the way, has spent his entire career playing in New York for the Yankees and the Mets to sign with the non-Oakland A's and play at a AAA
third year on their champ.
Exactly. I really think that's probably what happened.
Yeah, I mean, our take on it was that the A's are looking to do what the Royals kind of did last year. Is and I don't mean in terms of like being good.
No, you mean
in
sign
terms
a bunch
like,
of pitchers.
Yeah, sign enough names to show, hey, we're investing in this team to try and convince Las Vegas or whoever to build you a stadium. Like this is what we're gonna.
Luis Severino. By the way, in the year 2025, not the year 2019 when he was.
Well, yeah, but you take a look. I mean, you look at the people that the Royals signed. It was, I mean, other than the enormous contract extension to their shortstop.
I mean,
they didn't go out and make a bunch of big signings either.
No, but Michael Wacha, similar guys. They did multiple.
Yes,
I have no problem. Like I'm saying, I have no problem.
They're trying to convince people they're trying. That's what they're doing.
Well, also they literally an hour after the signing, they announced season tickets were for sale. Or tickets were for sale for next year in Sacramento, which is
that's a way to do
interesting timing. I just can't imagine Luis Severino. I was like, but again, I'm all for owners spending money. I mean, they have one of the worst owners in sports in John Fisher, but he's a multi-billionaire. Spend some money.
Sure.
I mean, it's ridiculous that they had a $25 million projected payroll before yesterday. It's ridiculous that even after making this signing that we're like, that's a crazy signing, they have a $40-something million projected payroll. If this is the first of, like you said, Royals like 3 moves like this or 4 moves like this where they're going to sign another mid-rotation starter or reliever and something like that and get the payroll. I mean, hell, they could sign 2 more Luis Severinos and have a $90 million payroll.
Right. Yes.
Which would rank, 28th in MLB.
Yeah. It'd still be $40 million less than the Twins.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
That makes much more sense to me because then you're doing what I think all teams should do, which is whether you're rebuilding or contending, spend money and try to win 5 more games. That's what you should always do. But if this is just the move, and they end up with like a $60 million payroll, 1/3 of which is going to a past his prime Luis Severino, that's just a real strange deal. So the other prominent pitching moves were actually fairly similar. Kikuchi signed $363.
Similar in terms of money, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Excuse me.
But Kikuchi went to a contending team.
Yes. Right. I would much rather have Kikuchi for $363 without a draft pick involved,
right?
Than Severino. I mean, I'd rather pay Kikuchi $100 million than Severino $67 million. If those were my two options.
How about Pablo Lopez at $363? You like that one?
Yeah, 64.5.
64.5.
Well, that's what we talked about earlier, which is like, Pablo Lopez had what he would be the first to tell you.
He would have been a free agent on this market.
Correct. If they hadn't signed him to an extension.
Yeah, he would have been in this market.
He had an inconsistent season. His overall performance was worse than he had hoped. He would be the first to tell you that. But if you were a free agent right now, and by the way, he's younger than all these guys. He's 29, I think. I think he'd get $100 million, no problem. I mean, he would get a 5-year, $120-something million deal, right? No problem. Looking at some of these prices, right. And so, while the Twins' payroll situation has caused people to look at his next 3 years, which are worth $21.5 million a year, and go, that doesn't really fit that well in a $130 million payroll, especially when you also are paying Correa $30-something million. Is he a trade candidate because of that money? It's the shame of it is he's undervalued.
Right.
That's a team-friendly contract, except in the circumstances where the team itself has imposed a payroll that is ridiculous.
He is the one guy that you could trade away, and it would both save you money and get you back significant value.
Yeah, probably.
Right? I mean that is $21 million off the books, and you'd get decent. I don't know that you get a middle of the order bat for him, but you would get some significant return back.
Yeah, think of whoever was bidding on Severino, who finished runner up.
Right. If
you would have said, "Well, too bad you didn't get Luis Severino,"
right?
What do you want to give us for 3 years of Pablo Lopez at a cheaper price?
Right.
You would think. So Kikuchi gets 3 years, $63 million, which tells you at that point, number 2, number 3 starter is $20-something million a year, basically.
Sure. Right.
Frankie Montes, who once upon a time was a talked about trade target on this show, but then got hurt and really hasn't been the same. Last year came back healthy. Actually pitched a lot last year. For the Reds and the Brewers, but had a high 4 ERA, gave too many homers, strikeout rate was down, but could be a kind of a bounce back guy. Got 2 years, $34 million from the Mets. And then Matthew Boyd, who has been injured throughout his career for the Tigers.
Yeah.
We've seen him a lot just in the AL
guy
Central.
who's perennial, he's going to break through candidate for a long
time. Good pitcher,
right?
lefty.
Yep.
Latched on with the Guardians last year on like an incentive-laden 1-year deal. Made 8 starts, plus I think 1 playoff start. 8 good starts, like in the second half for them, through like 40 innings, basically. Got a 2-year, $29 million deal.
Right. Both. I kind of wasn't wondering if there's going to be a 1 year plus an option or something.
I agree.
That, right?
But what we're seeing is basically an extra year.
Right.
And actually, in the light of these other deals, whether it's Snell, Severino, Boyd, Montes, I love $363 for Kikuchi. And I'm not like the biggest. He's been inconsistent, believe me. He was awesome down the stretch last year. I'm not confident that the Angels are going to be the team to keep him on track, obviously.
Right.
But $20 million a year for him compared to 15, 18, 25 million a year for some of these other guys, I'll take him just in terms of like the raw stuff and upside over all of them. But so to wrap this around and bring it to the Twins, they weren't going to be in the mix for any of these guys. Basically, if your question to us is, do you think the Twins have any chance of signing this guy? I can tell you, regardless of who this guy is, no, probably not. But all of a sudden now, Chris Paddock.
Well,
with a 1
Paddock,
year,
Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober, Pablo Lopez.
Well, but that's a completely different thing. Right. Chris Paddock at $7.5 million for 2025, which is a 1-year deal basically, and he's a free agent. I'm not sitting here saying he's a better bet than those guys. I'm not sitting here saying we talked about Boyd's injuries and he's got his own. He didn't pitch in the second half.
Yeah. the Boyd and the Montes deals give you a lot of hope for Paddock.
I mean,
right?
those guys are getting...
You can take a look at the others and go, well, these guys are kind of premier guys. They're being snapped up early. No wonder they're being paid, a premium, et cetera, for it. He belongs to an entirely different class of pitcher. His class of pitcher isn't that much different than, say...
No, I mean, performance-wise, he was no worse than Montes last year. Now, he pitched a lot less than Montes last year. And Chris Paddock is one of the most injured pitchers of the last 10 years. He might have thrown more innings than Boyd over the last 5 years. It's probably pretty close. So, at $7 million on a one-year deal, there's no second year
He's also
involved.
28 years old.
Right. So,
come on.
I think, under normal circumstances... If they had a $180 million payroll, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. Right. We'd just be like, he's the fifth starter. Honestly, we might be just saying move him to the bullpen.
Right.
But $7 million as sort of luxury item for a pitching staff when you're already at your payroll limit. I have said now, people are probably sick of hearing it, for 2 months or 3 months, that of the two veteran guys on one-year deals who are sort of could be superfluous, which is Paddock at $7.5 million and Vasquez at $10 million. To me, it should be much, much, much easier to move Paddock at his full salary.
You would think so.
And possibly get something
looking at
in
this
return.
market as it is right now. Have we seen any catchers signed?
Yes.
Okay.
Travis d'Arnaud signed. Higashioka signed. A few other guys. All for less than $10 million.
Right.
It's been the opposite. We can go through these pitching moves and say, boy, every one of these early signings make Chris Paddock on a one-year, $7.5 million deal look like a relative bargain. And then you can look at the 3 or 4 catching signings and go, who's going to trade for Vasquez when they could have just signed d'Arnaud for $6 million a year or something like that? Right. So I'm even stronger in my conviction that I'm correct on that in the face of every guest we've had on this show saying that's wrong. And multiple Twins people at the end of the season, when I pitch this idea to them, tell me, oh, no, Vasquez, we can move Vasquez. So we'll see.
I mean, if the catchers that have signed early are at a less high level than the pitchers that have signed early, right? I mean, these guys have been
there aren't high-level catchers.
Well, that's exactly right? So
but also Vasquez is at a less high level than Paddock, probably, in terms of upside.
Of course. No, my point being is I wouldn't be. It might be interesting to see what happens if they kind of wait out the market a little bit on the catcher thing. That I'm not saying that they're not going to have to eat any salary on it. I'm just saying I'm still optimistic they could get something for him if they want.
We should also note we were talking about the draft lottery earlier, but the MLB announced the what are they called? Competitive balance picks. Which they give out like a dozen or so. I think this year was 15 picks. Half of them are between the first and second round. Those are called competitive balance A picks. And then half of them are between the second and the third round. Those are called competitive balance B picks. Right. And they're distributed to teams based on a formula from MLB. I don't know if it's public formula or not, but it's basically market size and revenue and record. And the goal is to reward teams that are trying, but are trying under difficult circumstances. So it's kind of the idea behind revenue sharing, which is, teams like the Twins or the Guardians or the Pirates or whatever, if they're putting forth an effort and they're winning games and they're not just taking their TV money and trotting out a $60 million payroll, at the end of each season, the formula will spit out some picks for them. So the Twins got a competitive balance A pick awarded yesterday.
Which are kind of slapped in between the first and second round.
Yes. Right? Yeah. So it'll end up being basically like the 35th overall pick in that range.
We had 36th, but
something like that.
It's the 4th overall comp pick. So
right, but it goes behind the free agent comp.
That's right.
Pick, so there's going to be a few of them. But that is, and they've gotten these in the past, sometimes between the second and third round.
Yeah, what's going to happen in the first one is people are going to lose some picks, people are going to gain some picks based on the free agents that are signed, right? That's why we don't know the exact number.
Yep.
Right.
Because it depends on the contract signed by the free agents.
35th or 36th.
But the 35th pick in the draft, and I bring this up because one note about the competitive balance round picks, those are the only draft picks that can be traded. MLB, for the entire history of the draft prior to 5 years ago was the only league where you could not trade draft picks. And I know that drove people nuts, and it was hard to explain to people why. And now it's even harder to explain because now there are 15 picks out of 1,000 every year that you can trade.
Right.
And I bring this up for a couple reasons. One, I'm not saying the Twins will trade it, but essentially a late first-round pick, 35th overall, let's say, has huge value.
Yes.
I mean, the 35th pick in any draft will immediately be one of their team's best prospects.
Sure.
I think Matt Wallner was a comp pick. I think Charlie Soto was a comp pick.
Was Barrios a comp pick?
Yes, or he was just the second round. Maybe he might have been a comp.
I mean, he was right. He was around the. He was in the mid-30s. Yeah, right.
Tons of good players go in the mid-30s, and in terms of trying to slap a value on that pick, I mean, first of all, it adds a couple $1 million or $3 million to your bonus pool, which can be used to sign guys. Right. Well, that's minimally what the value is because every team is thrilled to give a guy $3 million. The real world value of that, because then you get that guy, for minimum salary for 3 years and arbitration, you get the guy's whole career for $3 million. It's probably closer to $10 million in terms of excess value. And so I bring this up for a couple reasons. One, I think most likely they'll just draft a player with that pick, which they should do, which is like a free prospect basically. But they could incorporate that into a trade, and essentially you're kind of trading a top prospect without having met that top prospect yet.
Right.
And the reason that teams like that is, first of all, they can choose the guy they want, and also they then get the money to spread around to other prospects. I've also already got, since this came out last night, people saying, well, could they attach that pick to, let's say, Vasquez and use that pick to move Vasquez's entire salary?
Yep.
Absolutely. If you wanted to move Christian Vasquez's entire salary, attach that pick and it's done. But the problem is that pick is worth more than him.
Right.
Or clearing his salary. So I think that would be an overpay. But it is a nice freebie. The Brewers got one. A bunch of teams got one, but I think the Twins got the third best one, the third highest one. And so it gives them another trade chip, and it's nice to be able to basically trade a top prospect but not have it be someone who anyone is emotionally attached to yet.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
Seth Stowes has not had a chance to become Facebook friends with their grandparents yet. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And so this is just a nameless, faceless. Now, come July, when he's drafted and everyone meets the people will be like, oh, don't trade him. But so that's a factor. Before we get to some other news and notes, let's talk about our last couple of sponsors. One of them is BetterHelp. We've talked about BetterHelp before. Here's the way BetterHelp works. If you have been thinking about, want to talk to someone about some issue you've been having, something you'd like to address in your life. Yeah.
End of year is a good time to reflect on a lot of stuff, or to think about what you want to do for 2025.
Perhaps you've listened to the first hour and a half of this show and you think,
I could be doing better things with my life.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I'm thinking that right now. But a lot of times talking to someone is not easy. You got to go through your insurance. You got to go set up an appointment, which can take weeks or months. The beauty of BetterHelp is they can set you up with a real licensed therapist, typically within a couple, 2-3 days, and they can tailor it to whatever approach you're comfortable with. So if you want to do a video chat, you hop on a video chat. If you don't want to be on camera, do a phone call. If you're like me and you hate doing phone calls, you can do a live chat and just type with the person. They can tailor it to your comfort level. And if you're not satisfied with it, if you think, it wasn't a good fit talking to that person, you can try someone else.
Try somebody new. Yeah. No matter how you're thinking about doing it, they seem to get over the obstacles. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, it's flexible, it's suited to your schedule, and all you have to do to get started is just fill out a really quick questionnaire, and you'll get matched with a licensed therapist. And then, like Aaron said, you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. So find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Gleeman today, and you get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Gleeman.
Our final sponsor is Factor,
yeah,
which is meals delivered to your home
Yeah.
that are chef prepared and dietitian approved.
It is a crazy time of year, and you don't want to have to go through everything you have to go through and then also be making meals for your family.
And you can choose from 6 menu preferences, whether you're trying to manage calories or you're trying to max out your protein or you're trying to avoid meat.
It's
or
easy, it's
whatever
tasty,
it is.
it's healthy, it's amazing.
Yes.
Right.
And you can find guilt-free comfort foods. You can find stuff tailored specifically to your diet.
I recommend the butter chicken. Butter chicken's outstanding.
And if you go to factormeals.com/50Gleeman, 50 Gleeman, and then use the code 50Gleeman, you will get 50% off your first box. Plus, they'll also throw in free shipping.
That's right.
That's the code 50Gleeman, 50 Gleeman, at factormeals.com/50Gleeman to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping while your subscription is active. Factormeals.com/50Gleeman. Okay. Let's hit some other some news and notes here. So I was thinking we should also mention, speaking of contracts I did not expect, Kyle Farmer got a 1-year, $3.5 million.
That's right. I saw
plus
that.
a team option
that's right.
or a mutual option for 2026.
Right.
I'm fascinated that he continues to get paid pretty well. That part makes sense. He's a viable backup.
Sure.
Good clubhouse guy, all that stuff. Versatile. But that every deal he signs, including the one he signed last year with the Twins as an arbitration eligible player, was like a 1-year, $6 million with a $6 million option for this year.
Right,
Which
yeah.
they declined and had to give him $250,000.
You're right.
How does he keep getting options added onto these contracts as like a utility guy? It's really strange. Like, why are teams like, we got to lock him up for next year? Because if he has that breakout year at age 35, whatever it is, it's very strange. He's going to the Colorado Rockies, which honestly, if I were kind of a, mid-30s utility guy looking for a last contract.
It's not a bad one to target.
I mean, Colorado's a great place. You might play a decent amount because they're not real good. We just saw them give like 300 at-bats to Jake Cave last year.
Right.
And if you're looking to like stave off late career decline,
right,
Coors Field is a hell of a drug.
Of course.
Coors Field can make a 220 hitter look like a 260 hitter with no problem. So, yeah, Kyle Farmer did well. Kyle Farmer, I did not expect to be the first Twins free agent off the board. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of all their...
Yeah, okay.
Not that they have some huge class, but like Kepler and Santana and some other guys.
Yeah, that's true.
Kyle Farmer getting like $3.5-4 million guaranteed. It's a pretty good thing.
Speaking of Jake Cave.
Yeah, went to Korea. Your favorite team, the Deucin Bears.
Not my favorite team, but I enjoyed my trip. I enjoyed my visit to their stadium.
Jake Cave
in Seoul, Korea.
I would advise people, go to baseballreference.com, which is the greatest website in the history of the world. And even better than Twins Daily. You guys are number 2. And look up Jake Cave. And whatever you think, however many seasons you think he played and however many games and at-bats you think he accumulated over the years, it's more.
Yeah.
And however much money you think he made, it's more. And
I bet you he has a blast in Korea. He has he'll have a ride in Seoul.
We'll see. Now, also, while you're on that page, look up the last season in which he had an above-average OPS. And then think to yourself, how did he keep playing for 5 years since then?
He is a hell of a guy.
Yeah. So we'll see how that translates to Korea. Last thing I want to say, he's a very cheap free agent option. So cheap, in fact, that he took $1 million to go to Korea. Kyle Farmer, not as cheap as I expected, but he was a cheap free agent signing for the Rockies.
I don't know if 3's much different than I expected.
Sure. Wow. I would have bet on a minor league deal if you said, will he get a minor league deal or $3.5 million guaranteed? I would have bet on a minor league deal.
I think I would have probably gone the other way, but
that's easy to say now, John.
Yeah.
You make yourself look good, buddy.
Of course I do.
You put yourself over.
Well,
yeah, that's easy. That's my job usually.
We should maybe that would be a interesting over-under episode for us to kind of go through.
How much? What will the contracts be?
Yeah, not necessarily. Maybe a few of the top guys, maybe a few guys we think the Twins might target, maybe a few of the guys that are leaving the Twins. That might be kind of a fun episode.
Just
to do
Santana, Kepler would be interesting. All right. We'll see if either of us can remember that between now and the next episode.
Okay, yeah.
But here are some other cheap free agent options that, if Twins fans are being even somewhat realistic, honestly, if you're being really realistic, even some of these guys are probably
Sure.
because they have no money like as of now. They have negative money probably as of now. But I wrote about some of these guys, so we just to run through them very, very quickly. But if you're looking for a bat, they lost Carlos Santana, which means first base is now open. Alex Kirilloff retired, which means to some extent first base, DH, left field has something of an opening. You could fill first base with Miranda and Julian. You could fill DH just with a rotating assortment of guys, which I actually think they would prefer to do post Nelson Cruz. They've generally done that when possible. I also think
if you're not getting a middle of the order bat, why not just fill it with whatever you got?
Mix and match guys. Guys who need a day off, all that stuff. I also have been saying for approximately 20 years that they should sign or trade for a competent right-handed hitting corner outfielder who can, hit left-handed pitching.
Okay.
It seems clear to me that they disagree that that's needed because they've basically never done it. Right. And when they have done it, it's been like a trade for Jordan Luplow, who was a minor league guy. Right. And then also just like, backup center fielder could be in play.
Sure.
Maybe a utility type to replace Farmer, let's say. So with that in mind, here are some low-cost fits. And the way I determined low cost was I took the Athletics big board, which listed 40 guys. I was part of the voting panel for that. And I crossed all them off.
That's right. Start with the 41.
41st. Yeah, and if I'm being honest, even like the guys in the – because we actually ranked it to 60, I think, because we didn't know who was going to take a qualifying offer and all that.
Right.
I actually eliminated the top 50.
Okay.
So 41 through 50 weren't known, but I crossed those out too. So here's what I was left with. These are not top 50 free agents, which to me says they're most likely going to be available for a 1-year deal, perhaps similar to or lower than the $5 million contract that Santana got last year.
Right.
Well, okay.
Right.
Number one, a gentleman named Carlos Santana would be a pretty good fit.
Right.
He's an older gent, but I've heard good things about the defense.
Yep.
And certainly did not look old last year on any level.
He looked great.
I fear, weirdly, you don't see a 39-year-old whose market is on the rise. I think he's going to get more than $5 million, certainly. I've heard that he's been talking to some other teams. I don't know that he's talking to the Twins. I honestly won't be shocked if he gets a 2-year deal or like a 1 year with an option that has some kind of decent buyout. I think he'll certainly get more than $5 million, which unfortunately, even if the Twins were interested, that might take them out of the running for him. But I can't believe I'm sitting here and saying a 39-year-old, basically platoon guy. He wasn't very good from the left side. He was okay. But at that price point.
Yeah. I mean, if I can certainly be convinced he'd be at 6. I have trouble seeing a 2-year 12 or 2-year.
Right, but the problem is if everyone thinks 10. He sounds good for $6 million, somebody's going to have to think he sounds good for $12 million. That's how the Twins ended up with Vasquez on a 3-year deal.
That's true.
So he would be a cheap if you could get him for a $1 million raise over last year, why would you not do it?
Right.
In my opinion. Josh Bell is another switch hitting first baseman who is much, much, much worse defensively to the point that he's probably more of a DH. He's huge, so he's going to be a much different look than Santana, but he's just kind of awkward around the bag. I don't know that he's the worst, but he's just not a good defender. Has had an up and down career, but has shown 30 homer power. Has been an all-star type of hitter.
Well, and he's caught fire a couple times within the last 2 years.
Yeah,
or something
like
for a little
trade deadline
or pre-trade deadline.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I mean, he's someone who, in a good year, is going to be much better than Carlos Santana.
Right.
In kind of an average year, he'll probably be worse than Carlos Santana. And then the other first baseman is Justin Turner, who, if you like a 39-year-old Carlos Santana, why not like a 40-year-old Justin Turner?
Right. Yeah.
Who's been a great player for the Dodgers and more recently Red Sox and Blue Jays and Mariners in the second half of last year. He's lost some power, and he used to be a third baseman. Now he's like first base DH, but he's pretty decent from what I saw last year at first base. Right-handed hitter as opposed to a switch hitter. not much of a power guy, more of a batting average, draw walks, control the strike zone type of guy. But if you're just looking for a cheap 1-year deal, he would probably be someone who would be available.
I could see that. He's a good fit.
Outfield-wise, one of the guys we've talked about seemingly every year for 10 years is Randall Grichuk, who's just your prototypical fourth outfielder, right-handed hitter, could play in center as a stretch, but can be in left and right, knocks around lefties every single year, puts up enough of a fight against righties that if you need him a couple times a week against righties, he's not the end of the world there. Generally been available on 1-year deals. He actually had a really good year last year after a couple of mediocre years. Harrison Bader is a guy we talked about last offseason as kind of a Michael Taylor-esque, mostly defense and speed, but does have some pop. He got $10 million from the Mets last year, but then didn't have a particularly good year, so maybe he could be a little bit cheaper. And then the non-tender group, which provides kind of a second wave of free agents.
Right.
Austin
Of mid-tier free agents.
Yeah, I mean, they're by definition, they were not wanted at their projected arbitration salaries.
That's right.
Chrissy's Phillies traded for and then cut Austin Hayes.
Oh, yeah.
After he had some health problems and didn't hit much. But if you look at Austin Hayes, first of all, he's younger than most of these guys. I think he's like 28, 29. He's been a borderline regular, like an everyday type of guy, but probably he's a right-handed hitter, corner outfielder, played a long time for the Orioles. Good career numbers against lefties. Mediocre career numbers against righties, and not a great defender, but an okay defender. He would be similar to Grichuk, a younger version of Grichuk if you get him. The Phillies cut him instead of paying him $6 million. Yeah. So my presumption is he's going to get $4 million or something.
Yeah,
like
I mean, well, he also he had several good years and he just fell apart last year. So.
Yeah. Ramon Laureano, who we saw with Oakland and Cleveland and bounced around, he had a decent bounce back with the Braves. He's a guy who right-handed hitter, good in the corners, can be stretched in center if needed. This is kind of the type that I would be targeting, I guess. Dylan Carlson, who was with the Cardinals, traded, I think, to Tampa Bay, kind of had a disappointing year. He's a younger guy, but again, borderline center fielder, good in the corners. He's actually a switch hitter, but better against righties. That would be a fit. Those are the kind of names that's not exciting. But trust me, John is not jumping up and down in his chair. Yeah. He's taking his pants off, which is strange, but I don't. That's separate.
I'm
maybe
just rubbing my face.
That's your face. Okay. Boy, we got a definite definition of that. But okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to.
That's what I'm expecting. Sort of.
A lot of these names are names where you would go, do we not have anybody in the organization that can kind of handle that to that level? I mean, you're looking at a low 700 OPS in a lot of these cases, or you're almost hoping for a load of low OPS.
Who do they have?
Well, that's my point. They just don't really have that kind of.
I mean, for instance, when they traded for Manny Margot last year, and they got his salary paid down to $4 million. It was a trade, but it was essentially a 1-year, $4 million deal. He was replacing Michael A. Taylor, who refused to take similar money until it was too late.
Right.
Ended up actually signing an identical $4 million deal with the Pirates, but it was after the Twins had quit. They would have preferred Michael A. Taylor, although he hit like 160.
No, he was terrible. Right.
Good defensively.
Tough year.
And the question in retrospect, or even at the time with Margot, was what you just said is, don't they have someone internally who can do that for the minimum salary and has more upside and is maybe... Well,
and the answer is no.
I mean, Austin Martin was at the time who they would have positioned in that role. Right. What we learned about Austin Martin, and I'm not saying this can't change because he's still young, but not a legitimate center fielder defensively last season.
Yep.
Pretty bad, and I would say surprisingly bad even in left field. And, enough of a hitter that no worse of a hitter than Margot, really. But that type of hitting only works if you're a good defender. Right. Now, Margot also hit poorly and wasn't a good defender either, but had previously been a good defender.
Right.
And, someone like Deshaun Kersey, who I'm a believer in, is a very good defensive center fielder, and I think could probably out-hit both of those guys, but he's left-handed.
Right.
And so as you're looking for a backup for Buxton, the preference would be to have it be a right-handed hitter so that if Buxton is healthy enough to play center, you can still use that right-handed hitter to platoon in the corners with the left-handed hitter. So
the original plan for Michael A. Taylor 2 years ago. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And now even at first base where you say, well, what do they need to sign, Justin Turner for and hope to squeeze out one more semi-productive year for $6 million? Why not take that $6 million, use it on something else, and just hand the job to a minimum salaried internal guy? Well, the internal guys are Miranda
Right.
or Julian.
Right.
And I'm not completely against that idea. I actually might do that if I were the Twins.
Yeah.
You can basically platoon those two,
Yep.
lefty and a righty, and then use them, as needed elsewhere, because you'll have one on the bench every day if they're a platoon. Someone can play DH too. They're going to combined cost the minimum salary.
Right.
So that saves you $5 million basically compared to Santana or Turner or Bell. But it's one thing to say that in the abstract. It's another thing to
watch
have
them
it be,
every day, right?
mid-May and go, how many throws from third have
Right.
bounced and
Right.
been an error
Right.
because Santana would have scooped it
Right.
and Miranda or Julian just aren't comfortable at first base or whatever. So it's
Or
one
how many third strikes are we going to watch Julian
Well,
take, or
that's
right,
another
or
thing, too.
how many weak ground balls is Miranda going to swing at outside
right.
the
You
zone?
don't have to be mean.
Well, I mean, listen. No, my point is that
Such a bully.
my point is that these guys we know what
Christmas, John.
we know what their weaknesses are,
Yes.
and just because they're cheap doesn't mean they've lost those weaknesses.
Right.
Right? Like we
Now-
we know those weaknesses. We were going to remember those weaknesses because we remember them from last season. So
Well, and the fear, I guess, I agree with all that. You're right.
now we don't know. It's not that these other guys, Justin Turner has some weaknesses, right?
Right. He might just be
right.
cooked.
Right.
But I will say, we had a similar conversation about first base and DH last year with Kirilloff in the mix, really. And it was like, well, why sign Santana for $5 million, $5.25 million,
Right.
when you could just hand that job to Kirilloff? You could just they didn't trust Kirilloff defensively. They didn't trust that Kirilloff could stay healthy.
Right.
They were proven correct, unfortunately, on both
Right.
fronts.
That's right.
And Santana outperformed what they probably would have expected even from a healthy Kirilloff all around.
Right.
And so there is that hope when you look at a guy like Turner or Santana or Josh Bell, where it's like we can point to seasons they've had. Now, sometimes they were 3 years ago or 10 years ago, but we can point to seasons they've had where they've been a really good, solid, valuable
Right.
regular.
Right.
We cannot point to seasons that Julian has had, certainly at first base, or full seasons that Miranda has had. But also, those guys can't do it unless they're given the opportunity. But the real, I think, risk is it's not so much choosing, a $6 million veteran over your in-house options. It's what happens if you just say, screw it. Miranda's our first baseman now. And then he gets hurt, as he's done
Right.
all three of
Right.
his seasons, basically.
Right.
Then who's your first baseman? Julian?
Right.
Okay. What if he just doesn't hit, or he gets hurt, or you want somebody to hit lefty? Then who do you have? Then it's, Junior Severino time.
Turns out, first baseman, you need somebody who can actually
Well,
hit.
but I mean,
Right.
I even say that in center field. Like, okay, you can say, why sign Harrison Bader when you can just hand that job to Austin Martin? Right. Well, what if Austin Martin looks as bad defensively in 2025 as he did in 2024, or gets hurt as he did, or doesn't hit, or whatever? Then who's your backup plan? So, unfortunately, I think the focus on whenever there's a payroll situation like this is, they're not going to be able to go out and sign a Kikuchi
Right.
or a whoever, somebody who's kind of interesting and impactful. But the real loss is the depth.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean,
It's the
especially
backups and the fourth outfielders and the middle relievers, and you're forced to make a decision between luxury items for $5 million or $3 million or even something, or all right, well, let's just cross our fingers and hand this to the AAA guy.
I mean, it also cuts both ways, right? On the one hand, you can take a look at it and say, plus it costs us $6 million to have two insurance policies,
Right.
Right. I mean, which is
a
nice,
great
which
thing
is
to
great,
say
right?
if you had $30 million.
Right. That's right.
But if you have negative $10 million,
But also because they're veterans, it's also because because you value that depth,
Right.
Then you've also spent $6 million and two guys who, if they don't produce, if they are end up like
has that ever happened?
like a couple of times last year's or the last few years, well, they're still on the roster. You're not getting rid of them the way. I mean, you don't have necessarily a better option if you've got Austin Martin in center field, because if he stinks, you're just going to send him to AAA, and now you don't have another option.
But
Like
you're
there is
more
no
likely
better option
to ditch the poor performing player
Right.
when it's a rookie.
or get creative. Yeah.
Whereas with Manny Margot,
Right.
Joey Gallo,
Right.
those type of guys. Yeah, no, I mean, you're right about that. I think that, when we talk about, all these...
And at least then you got $6 million in your pocket.
Wow. But to what end?
The Polettes have it in their pocket.
That's the thing, they need, more ski-doos for their yacht or something. I don't know why yacht is always the. I don't even know.
Make some more
I don't
payments
know
on
that
those
they
commercial properties.
yeah own a yacht. But it's sad to say, like, oh, I'm reading off a 40-year-old Justin Turner, Randall Grichuk. You know, not that these are bad players. Austin Hayes, who just got cut instead of given. These aren't bad players. These are role players. These are good, solid role players. And it's sad that we're like, well, unless something changes with like a Vasquez trade.
I'm not sure we can afford them.
I'm not sure they can afford them.
That's right. That's crazy.
But then it's also weird to say, well, they got to trade Vasquez and or Paddock to clear the money so that you can sign
Austin Hayes,
a role player at a different spot, basically.
Right.
Now, there is some logic to that. Like, okay,
Sure.
maybe your need in the outfield or at first base is more than your need as a backup catcher or a sixth starter or whatever. That's possible. You're just sort of reallocating resources in a way. But it's just a really weird, I would maybe call it pathetic situation to be in, where it's like, how can we make 3 moves to clear enough money to sign Justin Turner?
You're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You know?
Yeah, and
Right.
like
I mean, a lot
Paul
of
is
this.
some old guy.
Right.
Like, you're not even.
I wonder who the original Peter and Paul were in this. Were they talking about the?
And did they know
apostles?
Mary? Peter, Paul, and Mary. Wasn't that a?
My mom loved Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Is that why they were named that though? Because it's the apostles and Mary.
I don't think so.
You're the Bible guy.
I mean, I think their names were Peter, Paul, and Mary. Like, it wasn't uncommon to have Christian names in the late 50s, early
Well, okay.
60s.
People really liked your and by people I mean 2 people. Your religious history lesson.
My breakdown of the Egypt.
With Betsy.
Okay.
I guess I'll put Betsy as a third person who liked it. That's canceled out by me hating it.
That's right. That's right.
But also me hating things doesn't really register at this point.
That's right. Yeah.
A couple people were like, I'd sign up for a history podcast with bonus. And I was like, just get drunk and read a Wikipedia. Like, what do you mean, a history podcast with bonus? Let's get bonus.
I think I might do that tonight, actually.
Get drunk and read Wikipedia. Record it. It can be a Patreon.
Start at Black Stack Brewer, come home, open up Wikipedia. Sure.
Great. Well, have you ever seen Drunk History? It's a television
I
show.
have seen pieces of it. I've never
The
really
premise
watched
is
it. Yeah, so
they take a comedian.
Right.
They ply him with a bunch of alcohol.
Right.
They have them tell, without like a script,
Right.
the history of some event that I think they've chosen.
They know, right.
Historical something. And then they have like actors act it out, but in the way they told
Oh,
it.
that's awesome.
It's pretty funny. I would like John to really focus on, for instance, I don't know, Minnesota Twins history? Like of the last 10 years?
Came out with Jared Camp.
Yeah, that was good.
Okay,
I was
then.
surprised by that.
What do you,
I was
okay,
honestly
then.
surprised by
All
that.
right. Yeah.
What side of the plate
This
does
is Chris Parmelee's.
That's going to end up being our T-shirt.
That's right. That's right.
When we finally make
That's
a T-shirt after 20 years.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
We really did intend to have a T-shirt by now, but things got in the way. I don't know why. Maybe next year. Okay. That is it for us. We will be back midweek.
Weeks.
Well, we'll be back midweek probably on the Patreon
That's
side.
right. Yeah, that's right.
Hopefully
Couple weeks.
with some reaction to Rule 5 or
Right.
lottery, hopefully.
That's right.
When the Twins get the number 1 pick and take 10 guys in the Rule 5 draft, we'll have a
gonna be
lot to talk about.
super fun.
Yeah.
That's right.
Or Dan Hayes falls down an escalator in Dallas or something. Dan Hayes at the GM meetings.
Impressive.
Well, here's why I say this.
Okay.
Slipped and fell at the GM meetings, which were in San Antonio like a month ago. And the only reason I know this, because Dan sure as hell didn't tell me.
No, of course not.
Derek Falvey told me. And let me describe, he told me, I would describe him as excitedly told me. Like I saw him at the thing a couple weeks ago when it
Slipped and fell. Do we know like any more details?
it was raining
Okay.
and he was trying to like hop a curb or something and fell.
no.
Like just wiped out.
Oh no.
And
That's the worst.
Falvey like sidled up to me in the clubhouse on like one of the biggest days of his life
Ask
probably.
Dan Hayes about his fall.
And he's like, you hear about Hayes? And I was like, he's like a foot away from. He goes, San Antonio's raining out. Guy over here fell. Pretty bad. Ask him about it. I was like, Dan, did you fall in
the
San
worst.
Antonio? And he's like, you know. And then somebody who was there, Bobby or somebody, was like, oh yeah, he fell. I was like, oh, this is great. Anyway,
funny.
those are my sources. I got
All right.
sources.
I'm going to play that. I learned some other stories about Dan Hayes this week that were pretty interesting.
Yeah. Is that right?
All right, let's thank our sponsors.
Why has this show just become like the Dan Hayes Power
I don't know.
Hour?
I don't
now?
know. We got to get him back on the. We'll get him on the Patreon maybe next week.
And people
live
wonder-
from the winter meetings. Get Dan Hayes
that's
on.
where you're gonna want
It's
him.
not like he's got anything else to do.
No, but the blood alcohol level
Well,
is something.
I don't have a problem with that.
And people wonder, by the way, why I sometimes get angry with him when he's on the show. You start to put the pieces together. Thank you to Blackstack, first of all.
Well, yeah. So let's do
Our
it.
presenting sponsor.
Our presenting sponsor, Blackstack Brewing. I'm going to see you tonight, Blackstack. Hey, I'm excited about it. But
John talks about them like when a guy goes off to war and his girlfriend sends him letters. I'll see you tonight, honey.
See you tonight, honey. You guys can see him too. Just stop by a liquor store near you. Also, thanks to our other sponsors, BetterHelp and Factor and Raycon and Acorns and Harry's. We will be back next week, maybe with a live from Dan Hayes live from the winter meetings
Our
on the
post-winter
Patreon.
meetings episode.
Patreon.com/Gleeman. Otherwise, we will talk to you in a couple weeks on the free Gleeman and the Geek episode.
Gleeman